Well, hello there, Dippers, and welcome back to Week 5 of the Fantasy 15 podcast. As always, Dippers, I'm your host, Drake, joined by the man, the producer, late Pip Shaventone.
Bowl fan of the week, Julio Jones will catch a touchdown pass.
And bringing his meat stud stack of the week all the way from Johnson City, Illinois, we have Lex Glasgow.
I'm also playing wide receiver for the Green Bay Packers this week.
That wide receiving core is looking very, very thin. But guys, let's go ahead and all just take turns patting ourselves on the back for last week. You talk about the money stacking up. We absolutely killed it. We had our cheap quarterback, Mitch Trubisky, fire off, totally just obliterate the numbers that we projected him for. We had everybody hot. We had everybody scoring. Guys, we killed it. We absolutely killed it last week.
If Michael Thomas did screw off in a big way and only get 3 points, we would have won astronomical more money. At one point in time, I was up $500, and he just forgot how to play football.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody saw that coming from Michael Thomas last week.
No, nobody in the world saw that
coming. The guy
coming.
was on pace for 220 catches this year, and he puts up 3 points.
Yeah, and had the Seattle defense not just completely fallen on their face, I would have been up quite a few thousands of dollars. Instead, I had to roll. I killed it. But that defense killed me, so we're diving back to the well. Just a little preview for the defense. But latency, you know what to do. Let's get it started. Hot and heavy. Bring the noise. Fantasy 15, a sauce on the side production. Alright guys, in case you're not familiar with how this works, we're going to run through all of your fantasy options for FanDuel, DFS, and break them down, tell you high-priced players, low-priced players. We'll tell you who the meat stud stack of the week is. Meat stud stack of the week, that's 30 points out of your quarterback, 20 out of your wide receiver, and we're trying to get a cool 50 out of 2 guys. Then we'll kind of go through some of your season-long fantasy, talk about some hot topics there, and we will give you our official sauce on the side lineup, which last week did pretty well. So Lex, let's start it off. Quarterback, hot and heavy, high-priced option. Where are you going?
The only high-priced guy that we're going to go to in my lineups this week, I'm going with Matt Stafford. The last 6 games against Green Bay, he's averaging over 313 yards and 14 touchdowns. Okay, they're not going to be able to run the ball very well against Green Bay this week, I don't think. And they don't want to run the ball, it seems like. Kerryon Johnson's a monster, but they don't seem to want to feature him. The way that they're going to attack Green Bay is throwing that ball down the field to Marvin Jones all day, hitting Golden Tate in the slot. Look for Matt Stafford to have a big game. Look for him to put up 350 and maybe 3 touchdowns this week.
Speaking of Matthews, for the 3rd week in a row, I'm going with Matt Ryan. Since picking up 9.8 points in week 1, he's put up 31, 40, and 29. This week, he faced the Pittsburgh Steelers defense. Quite frankly, we could go out there and call him up for 400 yards and 5 touchdowns. Matt Ryan, the lock of the week.
Yeah, I think Matt Ryan is the lock of the week. 8,300 price, and this is a funnel game. I talk about it all the time. Funnel game. So the Steelers defense against the running backs in fantasy, 7th best. This week on the slate of games that you get for 1 o'clock and 4 o'clock games, they're the worst against quarterbacks. Ryan's coming in hot. 3 games of at least 290 total yards and 3 touchdowns. And we're looking at a team in the Steelers that have played Fitzmagic, Flacco, Tyrod Taylor, and Patrick Mahomes, which, there's maybe one good quarterback there out of the 4. And they've given up 28 fantasy points per game. I think Matt Ryan's going to eclipse that 28. I think he's going to be flirting with 30, and he may even head north to 40. It just depends on how much volume he's going to get and if they get the opportunity to play in a shootout. So, Lex, you talked about your high-price option. Let's give us something cheap at the quarterback spot.
Quarterback, the cheap guy this week, I think, is Derek Carr. Last week, he had 437 yards against the Browns. The week before that, he had 345. He's hot right now. The way they're winning games is by him throwing the ball a bunch, and he's moving the ball up and down the field, moving the chains constantly. This week, I think they're going to be playing from behind a bunch because I think the Chargers are a way better team than the Raiders are. Look for that positive game flow for the Raiders throwing the ball and put Derek Carr in there.
My cheap quarterback this week will be Blake Bortles. He's playing Kansas City defense, and if we could carve up the Pittsburgh Steelers, your little brother could carve up the Kansas City defense. $7,000. I think we're going to have a big week.
Yeah, I like both those guys. I was back and forth on both of those options. But the more that I look at Derek Carr, the more that it makes me just scratch my head and wonder why this guy's only 7,000. He entered the week as the 4th in passing yards in the NFL, but he's only had one game over 15 points this year for fantasy. Last week, if Martavis Bryant could catch a cold on a deep ball, Carr eclipses 40 points easy. Chargers, 10th worst team against fantasy quarterbacks, but they're the only team that's in that bottom 10 that has not had a quarterback toss the rock at least 40 times in a game. So you're looking at Carr, who's averaging 42 passes per game. I think he's a 300-yard lock this week. The touchdowns are your only question with this guy. I mean, he only has 6 touchdowns on the year. He's been throwing picks, but his picks compared to his completion percentage numbers are they make you scratch your head. They make you wonder how in the world he can be throwing picks at such a high volume, but yet also being able to complete passes at such a high volume. I think Derek Carr is a lock him in. I think he's going to finish this week as a top 5 quarterback, and at the price of 7,000, you have to love it. So we'll get to running backs. Last week, we killed it on running backs. We actually had the top 2 options basically played all across the board. So let's keep the hand hot. Lex, who do you like?
I like at the top this week, Melvin Gordon. Last week against the Browns, the Raiders gave up 208 rushing yards and 3 touchdowns. Every time you looked up on the screen, you saw Nick Chubb just taking off and running like crazy. Melvin Gordon is the mainstay of that Chargers offense. When everybody else is not playing consistently, he is always there. He's been their most consistent player all year, and he's the workhorse of that offense. Look for him to have at least 100 yards and maybe even 2 touchdowns and maybe even 50 receiving yards this week.
My high running back might be a guy you kind of low owned because he's playing an okay defense. That's Saquon Barkley. Giants offense, nothing to be desired there. But last week against an okay normal defense, he put up 19 points. He's put up 17 or more points every week this season. He's not putting up a lot of yards receiving or rushing, but he's combining both for a lot. He's basically a lock for 17 points.
I actually like both of those guys, but a running back here that's just kind of the obvious choice for me is Christian McCaffrey, 8,100. Just watch Kamara versus the Giants, and that's what you're going to get out of McCaffrey this week as he gets to play the Giants. The last 2 weeks heading into his bye week, McCaffrey, they rode him like a rented mule. 26 touches per game, either through the air or running the ball. So if it's not there with him finding room to run on the ground, he's going to see a ton of targets in this game. And you're looking at McCaffrey, 17.2 fantasy points per game this season, 0 touchdowns. 0 touchdowns. And I'm looking at a Giants defense that's given up the second most touchdowns to running backs this season. He's going to find pay dirt. This is almost a lock of the week as much as Matt Ryan is. I think that this guy will find the end zone this week, and he will score you close to 30 fantasy points. So we'll go with a cheap price running back. I know there's a lot here this week, a lot that we love compared to last week. Lex, who do you like?
I'm going to go with my guy, Aaron Jones. The Lions are ranked 32nd in rush defense. They're terrible. They got ran all over the place by Zeke last week. He took them for, as Drake would say, the ride for 5 last week. Aaron Jones is by far that best running back for Green Bay. All the wide receivers are hurt. It's not even going to be close. They're going to give him the ball. I see him getting the ball 20 times this game. He can also catch the ball, which is a big thing this week, too. I can see Rodgers having to throw that little check down route. Look for him to have over 100 yards and maybe even a score.
Leighton, I'm actually going to just go ahead and piggyback straight off of that. And I love Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones is my cheap price running back, and there's a couple reasons why. So last week, it came out that Aaron Rodgers had been really pushing for Mike McCarthy to give Aaron Jones more playing time. And had that game not just been a tremendous blowout, I think he'd have been on the field a lot more than what he was, and he was still very, very efficient whenever he was in there. So you're looking at a running back with the Packers, 17 carries, 107 yards so far this season. I think he's going to match those season totals just in this week. 177, 186, 87, and 181. Okay? Those are huge numbers, and that's what the Lions defense is giving up just on the ground to running backs. That's like a 1920 stat line for a defense against the running backs. Leighton C., who do you like for a cheap running back?
Well, thanks to my superior intuition, I knew you guys were both going to pick Aaron Jones, so I went with a different pick and picked TJ Yeldon. About an hour and a half ago, we got announced that Leonard Fournette will miss this game. And TJ Yeldon, he's going to be a catch machine out of the backfield. He's going to get basically all the carries. TJ Yeldon is the guy I love this week coming to Kansas City.
I think you can lock him in 2 touchdowns. I think this is going to be a 2-touchdown week because if they get in the red zone, they're either going to, A, run the ball, or B, throw the ball to TJ Yeldon. So they're going to throw it to a running back. Whether or not it's going to be Grant or Yeldon, it's going to kind of be a flip of a coin there. But I think it's going to be TJ Yeldon week, and I think that they're going to have to keep pace, so they're going to be throwing the ball, and then every rushing opportunity will go to Yeldon. Wide receivers, there's a lot of stuff to love this week. We have a huge shootout in Atlanta, and your 2 highest priced wide receivers are playing in that game. So, Lex, who do you like at the wide receiver position?
I'm actually going with one of those guys you just talked about, Julio Jones. My grandmother could put up $150 and 2 touchdowns on the Steelers defense this year. Julio Jones is one of the most freakish athletes in all of the NFL. He hasn't found the end zone yet this year, which is insane. Last week he had 173 yards, did not find the end zone. Julio Jones is finally going to find pay dirt this week, and he might eclipse 200 yards and have a score.
My guy's also Julio Jones. Open the show by saying he's going to get a touchdown this week. I'm going to give a fact for you guys. Julio Jones had the second most 100-yard games without a touchdown ever. Second most ever by 1 game. And he made 8 seasons. There's no way that could continue for the rest of this season. He had 169, 175-yard catching game this season. This is the worst defense he's faced. He's going to have absolutely humongous, nuclear, awesome, out-of-this-world week.
Yeah, I think there's no way that he goes another week without a touchdown, especially whenever he's going to be playing Pittsburgh, who basically, they have a hole in their defense, and it's basically everywhere that's not within 3 feet of TJ Watt. And I'm looking at this game, and every game that I've watched of the Steelers, any touchdown pass that they've given up has kind of been that long catch, run, and score. And that's exactly how Julio has had to find the end zone over the past few seasons. So I think that he's going to get one of those just monumental catch and runs that we're just accustomed to seeing Julio Jones do almost week in and week out. He'll find pay dirt this week, and I love Julio. But do not be afraid, because Antonio Brown was drafted as the number 1 wide receiver in almost every league this year for a reason. He has not paid off. If he does not pay off this week, I don't know if there's going to be a week that he's going to pop and finally become, business is booming again, AB style. I think that both these guys will go over 20 points easy this week. So cheap price, wide receiver. I didn't think that there was a lot to love here, but if you pick your poison, I think that there's some good plays here. Lex, where are you leaning?
I'm going to go down to Marvin Jones Jr. He's playing the Packers defense, who the way you score on the Packers defense is the big play. They give up a ton of big plays down the field. Marvin Jones is a deep threat. In 5 games against the Packers, he's averaging over 5 catches, over 100 yards, and close to 2 touchdowns in those 5 games against the Packers.
That's crazy.
That is insane. You put Marvin Jones in that lineup every time he plays the Packers.
I'm going with another 3-peat this week. And Tyler Boyd. 6,300 over the past 3 weeks. He has led the Bengals in targets, receptions, and yards in each of the last 3 weeks. He's $6,300. He's extremely underpriced going against a weak Miami defense.
I'm actually going to go to a guy that Stephen A. Smith hates. This week he referred to D.D. Westbrook as some guy named D.D. Westbrook. Stephen A., if you don't know who D.D. Westbrook is, you probably shouldn't be calling yourself a sports analyst, because the guy finished in the top of a Heisman voting and actually got the chance to go to the ceremony. So I'm going with this guy, 5,900. This is a guy who plays with a chip on his shoulder. He said that in his first week that he was going to be playing, he was going to explode. I'm pretty sure that he said he was going to have a 200 receiving yard game. And whenever Stephen A. puts a target out in the middle of the field for this guy, he's going to go get it. And he's getting a very, very juicy matchup. And he saw 13 targets last week. So I think that you can go ahead and lock him in to that 2 double-digit targets. We won't lock him in for 13 because that's a ton. I think double digits is pretty good for him, and I think that's what he's going to see. I think D.D. and Cole are better options, but I think this is going to be one of those D.D. Westbrook games, especially in a game that's going to be a shootout, and they're going to have to find ways to get points on the board. I do like D.D. So tight end, we kind of do tight end a little different. We don't necessarily go with a high price option and a cheap price option, because most weeks it's one guy that pops, so we're just going to give you a couple guys that we really like. Lex, who do you like at the tight end position this week?
This week, I love Jimmy Graham, based on the fact that Aaron Rodgers does not have any pass catchers that are healthy right now. The only person that's healthy is Jimmy Graham, which he's kind of going to get thrown to by default. And if you give Jimmy Graham a lot of volume, a lot of opportunities, he's going to convert. He might not be Jimmy Graham of old, but he's still going to have a big week. You can't guard him with one guy. They'll have to double cover him. Look for Jimmy Graham to have a big week.
For my tight end, I'm going way down, all the way to 4,600, and that's Vance McDonald. We talked about the Falcons game a ton already. The over his game, 57.5 points. He's taken away basically all the tight end targets and catches from Jesse James. For $1,400, I think he's a great value and could honestly be a winner this week.
Yeah, and Lex, to kind of piggyback off what you're saying, I would not be surprised if Jimmy Graham gets a ton of receiving, actual wide receiver routes this week, and they move Mercedes Lewis into almost that full tight end position, and let Jimmy Graham kind of just run as a number 2 wide receiver, just kind of by default, because he is probably the second best wide receiver on that team. My tight end, though, I think it's a pretty obvious one. So you guys remember whenever Vance McDonald stiff-armed Conti back to Windy City? Well, I think that was just a distraction that this Steelers defense is averaging, giving up 100 yards and 1 score to tight ends over the last 3 games. Like, I understand that Travis Kelce can put anybody on a 100-yard game and 2 touchdowns. I'll even cut you some slack and say, 100 yards and 1 touchdown to Cameron Brate and O.J. Howard. Like, that's a little bit understandable. But last week, 99 yards to the 3-headed monster of Nick Boyle, Max Williams, that's Max Williams with 2 X's, and Mark Andrews. Like, you have a real problem there. Like, you cannot defend the tight end position. And I'm looking at a guy at Austin Hooper who's 5,000. And I think he's kind of underpriced for this matchup, but it's kind of just for the fact that he hasn't really done anything all season, hasn't been getting a ton of target share. But I think the fact that he's going to be open almost every single play because the Steelers have that hole in the defense, I think that he's going to get an increased target volume. I think he could potentially see a touchdown, but I'm going to say that you can lock him in easy for 70 yards. And also, Jared Cook, 5,900. He's the number 1 tight end in fantasy this year. And just look back, watch the tape of George Kittle running 82 yards on the Chargers defense. So that one's pretty obvious. So defense, I think we're all going to be in the same boat. Last week, it kind of killed us that we weren't all on board any team that plays the Bills. So guys, who do you really like this week as far as the tight end, or as far as the defense?
Tennessee Titans.
Titans.
Yeah, if Josh Allen beats me, then I'm going to take... I take the L if Josh Allen beats me.
Same thing. I agree with Leighton. Live by the Titans, die by the Titans this week.
I don't hate watching the Ravens defense playing against the Browns, but $300 more, I can't really see them scoring more points than the Titans defense.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I'm looking at a Titans defense. This was my sleeper. This was my sleeper defense coming into the season. The last 3 weeks, they have had 3 straight games with at least 3 or more sacks, and you're looking at a Bills offense, and especially offensive line. They traded Marshall Newhouse. He's the only guy on the team that would be able to stop a gust of wind. So I don't would be able to withstand a gust of wind. The rest of them just fall over. This Bills offensive line is atrocious. Josh Allen kind of relies on guys to get down the field and load up and throw it deep. He's not going to have time to do that against the Titans. I think the Titans are going to be locked in to have a killer week, and especially if you look at it, they're priced in the lower half. They're one of the lower half-price tight end or defenses. I am all in on the Titans this week. So, guys, who are some big money plays that you think are going to flop?
Basically, I just have 2 out of both quarterbacks. Patrick Mahomes going to the Jacksonville defense. I'm not saying he won't have 15, 16 points, but you're not going to have the kind of play you want out of a guy who costs that much money. And then Aaron Rodgers. We talked about how basically his wide receiving core completely depleted. He's still injured on that knee. I think there could be a week where you look at more of the running of the football with a weak line of defense. I'm going to stay away from Aaron Rodgers in DFS.
As far as a big money flop, I'm looking at A.J. Green. He's the 3rd highest priced wide receiver, but he's been super touchdown reliant. I mean, the guy's had 5 touchdowns in 4 games, and I'm looking at the shootout last week that they had against Atlanta. He should have just exploded, but it took a touchdown in the last 30 seconds of the game for him to even have a decent fantasy game. He ended up with 4 catches, 78 yards, and a score, but the Bengals offense was firing on all cylinders, and he was really nowhere to be found. So I would definitely shy away from A.J. Green this week, especially for the price. And another guy that I'm going to shy away from, I know a lot of people are going to be on James Conner. just for the fact that he had a great week 1, and Atlanta, their defense has just been atrocious this year. But James Conner, I don't know how good he really is. I mean, two of his last 3 games, he's been held under 20 rushing yards, and he kind of had to make up the gap with the volume through the air, but he really wasn't that efficient. And had he not had the 3 touchdowns this season, we would kind of look at him as really underperforming for a guy who's supposed to be stepping in for Lev Bell and supposed to be this monster. And another guy that I'm actually going to two guys actually I'm going to shy away from. I think I'm going to shy away from Zach Ertz and Travis Kelce at the tight end position, just because Kelce, he's going against that Jacksonville defense. They're extremely tough. You know, Telvin Smith can run with anybody in the NFL, which is a rarity for linebackers matched up with a tight end. So I'm going to shy away from that one for sure. And Zach Ertz, he's 7,500, which is pretty expensive, and he's going to be playing that Minnesota defense, which is going to have some extra time to prepare. They did play on Thursday, and they got housed. All week, everybody's been talking about how this Minnesota defense is not what they were last year. I think this is their get-right game, and they're going to kind of just shut down the Philly offense. So, Lex, who do you have some big money flops?
This week, I'm going to stay away from Stephon Diggs. He's going against that Philly defense. I think if you're going to play anybody on that wide receiving core this week, you got to play Adam Thielen. Stay away from Diggs. Also in the same game, Alshon Jeffrey had a big week last week. Don't overlook that. He's playing against Minnesota. He's going to get the Xavier Rhodes treatment. I don't like that at all. I also don't like Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill is facing Jalen Ramsey this week. They're already talking. You hear it in the media already. Jalen Ramsey is that dude who might get Tyreek Hill ejected from the game in the middle of a fight this week. Put them on fight alert.
Yeah, put them on fight alert, especially with Jalen Ramsey already running his mouth. He even hinted at the fact that last year he wasn't even put into the Pro Bowl as a wide receiver. He was put in as a special teams guy.
Receiving specialist.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think that's going to play into the psyche of Tyreek Hill, which if you look at his track record, not a very
even kill guy when he's put into situations where he's instigated.
Yes, when he's back against the wall, this guy does not make good choices.
He comes out punching.
Yes. So, Lex Glasgow.
Lex Glasgow.
Lex Glasgow.
Lex Glasgow.
Lex Glasgow's Meat Stud Stack of the Week.
All right, boys. We're going back to the well this week. And by the well, we're talking Leighton's well. Matt Ryan, baby. He's on fire. He's playing like a man on fire right now. He's playing like Matt Ryan of old, not Matt Ryan that is Andy Dalton. Okay? We're going to stack him with Julio Jones, who I said earlier might have 200 yards and 2 touchdowns. You put that together, they're going to score maybe 60 points. I don't anticipate the ball to be ran too much in this game. I actually look for that to get lost a lot in this game, which I think it's going to be a high-scoring affair, probably going to be the highest-scoring affair of the week. You also need to go hammer that over. Look for Matt Ryan and Julio Jones to go off. Put them on 60-point alert this week.
I absolutely love that. That Meat Stud Stack of the Week should absolutely dominate this week. So, guys, it is time for the Sauce on the Side official lineup. At quarterback, I'm actually going to go with my cheap option here. I do love Matt Ryan, but I want to get a lot of the wide receiver scoring in the Pittsburgh and Atlanta game, so I'm going to have to shy away from actually starting Matt Ryan in this lineup. I'm going with Derek Carr. 7,000. I gave you all the reasons why he's going to pop, and I think this is going to be kind of a keep the ball rolling game for Derek Carr because he did show out last week. At running back position, I absolutely love T.J. Yeldon and Aaron Jones, and they're both really, really well priced. So I think if you're wanting to build your lineup, I don't have a problem with just going ahead and starting your lineup with T.J. Yeldon and Aaron Jones because both of these guys are going to have phenomenal weeks. And then at the wide receiver position, this is where we're going to make our money. We're going Julio Jones, 8,800. He's going to be playing in a shootout, and he's going to find the end zone. So I absolutely love any week that Julio is going to get 6 points from a touchdown. And then I'm going Antonio Brown, just because I think this game is going to be such a shootout. And I think this is going to be the week that Antonio Brown finally gets things going right. And then like Lex said earlier, Marvin Jones Jr. I mean, he has absolutely destroyed the Packers secondary over the past few seasons since he's been in Detroit. I absolutely love it. I think he's going to get that long kind of just staple play of Marvin Jones Jr., where it's just a deep ball and he's going to catch it. Tight end position, I'm going Austin Hooper. Steelers can't stop anybody running out of the tight end spot, so I'm in love with Austin Hooper. And then my flex option, Robert Woods, 7,200. He has had a phenomenal season, kind of flown under the radar. Last week, he only got 5 targets in a huge shootout. I don't think that that's going to continue. He had 5 targets, but he also had 5 catches. So he paid off big time for the amount of volume that he got. And I think that this week, target share is going to go up a little bit, possibly going to get more points. And then at the defense, obvious Titans, play anybody who's playing Josh Allen. I absolutely love it. So guys, for a year-long fantasy league, let's go ahead around the room and we will just kind of give guys off that you would sell. If you had a guy sitting on your team right now, who would be the most likely guy that you would sell?
Right now, I think the guy I'd be most likely to sell is James Conner. I would be calling up whoever owns Le'Veon Bell in your league, trying to trade him to him immediately. You know, Le'Veon Bell's I don't think he's came out and personally said it, but it's been reported that he's coming back week 7 on their bye week to come back, and he's going to be able to play week 8. I'd be looking to get rid of James Conner as immediately, as quick as possible, while he's still got some value to him, because once Le'Veon comes back, he's done. He won't probably play just minimal snaps the rest of the year.
Yeah, some situation. It's kind of over now because the starter's back with Tevin Coleman. Last week, Tevin Coleman, started for Atlanta. Freeman could be out in 2 or 3 weeks. Freeman's back this week. Now it's an injury report. So now all I can do is trade Coleman to Devontae Freeman. And I feel like that's something you should do. Okay, I feel like Devontae Freeman owners should pay up more than somebody else would for Tevin Coleman, who I guess is a good running back when he gets the carries.
Yeah, I think I would be on the phone right now to whoever has, or whoever really likes Patrick Mahomes in your league, if you have him. I would be selling Patrick Mahomes to basically the highest price bidder in my league, because it's not going to get any easier for him. We saw last week there was a little bit of blemish in the armor. I know that he played great, but his fantasy stats weren't there like they normally are for a guy who goes out there and basically throws 4 or 5 touchdowns every single game. And we said it wasn't sustainable. And after this week, I think people are going to be a little hesitant to buy in on him, especially if the Jags kind of get after him like I think they will. And also, Mike Evans. I was on this last week, and I'm going to repeat it to you guys. If you have Mike Evans or Djax, sell, sell, sell. Jameis Winston has never had the kind of connection that Fitzpatrick had shown over the past few weeks with Jameis. So I don't think that that's going to be sustainable the first few weeks of the season. He gave you great weeks early on. Don't try to ride the wave. Don't get cute with it. Just go ahead and ship him off. Get you a legitimate running back, wide receiver. You could probably even sneak in a good running back with a great wide receiver because he had been playing to that standard. And Djax, he's not even going to be a playable option once Jameis comes back. So just get you a playable option out of the Djax, and I think you'd be a huge upgrade there.
Just real quick, David Johnson, he had a 12.9 fantasy points per game. He has some tough defenses, but if you have him in a redraft league or dynasty league, whatever, do you think you trade him now and see what you can get for him, or think you hold out, wait till the value is high, then trade him? What do you do with David Johnson?
Last week was so Steve Wilks. This has been a Steve Wilks problem, not a David Johnson problem.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think that last week they almost pulled off a win. So we saw with Rosen, they ran the ball a lot more with David Johnson. They tried to actually get him into space, which was like the one thing that you had to do as the Cardinals offense was to get David Johnson the ball in space, and they finally did that. They almost pulled off a win. So I think Wilks is kind of sitting there this week like, hey, we rode the hot hand, we just kept force-feeding the ball to David Johnson, and it almost paid off for us. So I think with a rookie quarterback, they're going to be running the ball more. I don't think that you're going to be able to trade him for a huge value right now. So I would almost be on the opposite end of the coin, saying that if a guy's fed up with David Johnson because he has not been performing like a RB1, you could probably go out there and get him for a decent price. And, I think that's something that I would probably explore in my league. I wouldn't give up the King's ransom because it's no dead set that he's going to, that Steve Wilks is going to continue to give him the ball. But I think that the opportunity is a lot higher for him to get the ball from here on out than what it was the first 3 weeks.
Yeah, I agree with you. It is a Wilks problem. The thing is, though, Wilks isn't going anywhere. If I have David Johnson, I'm hoping next week or two he just goes off of 20 points, 30 points, then I trade him high right there.
Yeah, I think that you could, if you can trade him high, I would, but I think that more people are gonna be looking to buy him low, and I'm in the camp that I would try to buy him low because it's not going to get any worse for David Johnson. I mean, he wasn't getting any love the first 3 weeks. Finally, got some love last week. They almost won the game, so Steve Wilkes is going to have to sit on the couch and realize, hey, there's a recipe for success in this offense. So we actually only had one fan question this week. Ended up having to do the podcast a little earlier. Will Fuller or Dion Lewis this week? Guys, where are you leaning?
I'm going with Will Fuller. And if you're trying to talk about fallacies, this might be a fallacy, but in every single game that Will Fuller has started with Deshaun Watson, he has caught a touchdown pass.
That is crazy.
Every single one. So I'm going to go with Will Fuller. Deshaun Watson just loves him for whatever reason. Will Fuller's my guy.
I'd probably go with Will Fuller too. And a lot of this comes on one of your other options. If you're needing, if it comes down to it, you're watching the thing, you think, oh crap, I'm going to lose this week. Throw in Will Fuller, he's got that big bust potential. But I think the stable play would be Dion Lewis, but I'd definitely go for Will Fuller.
I think I'm actually just going to go with Dion Lewis. I really like both of the running backs this week for the Titans. They're kind of that grinded out team, and I think that's exactly how they're going to just kind of put the Bills to bed. I could see them getting that first half, 17-point lead, and then just basically, all right, this is Derrick Henry's drive. Take the keys to the car. Him just pound it down there, and then Dion Lewis, all right, it's your drive. Pound it down there. And I think that's what's going to be. And early on, Dion Lewis is going to see, the pass volume, which is always what he needs to be successful. But I still think he's going to get a ton of carries this week to put the game on ice. I don't think he's going to get as much carries as Derrick Henry. I actually have Derrick Henry as a running back that you could probably start in DFS because the workload is going to be so high on him. But the workload's also going to be high on Dion Lewis. And we've said it in the past, we see these guys as complete opposites. Both of them do a lot of good things that the other one cannot do. And I think this is a week that both of them are actually going to have pretty good success. So I would actually go with Dion Lewis. So guys, anything else before we wrap this week up?
No, nothing else. I'm on my way to Green Bay right now. I'm going to be working that slot this week.
It'd be great. Let's do it.
And on that note, for Lex, for Leighton, and Drake, Dippers, as always, stay saucy.